Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
Hey, and welcome to Break Free and Trust, Redesign for Living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
And in this episode, Jacqueline and I will continue with a theme we developed in our last episode. And that was, we are constantly seeking or striving for something that exists in the future or in the next moment. That is, we never seem to be fully engaged in the present moment. Today, we explore why this is a collective phenomena and that our society is geared towards keeping us out of the present moment. How does society do this? What meaning does it hold for us? And more importantly, how do we break free of it? We explore this and a bunch more in this show. And as always, for live viewers, show will be open for questions in the second half. Call in at 1-800-930-2819 or write your questions in the chat. And just before we actually jump into the show, Jacqueline, do you want to talk at all about the offerings you have coming up?
Sure. It's kind of perfect in line with what we're talking about in our show today. Beginning next week on September 15th, Mondays, I will be holding a group at 6:30 and Wednesdays, 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to explore something called the presence process. And if our show is interesting to you and working with present moment awareness is something that's interesting to you, I would encourage you to go onto my website, which is www.agatheringplace.ca, and look under book online for information about that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. So you mentioned in our intro that society is geared towards keeping us out of the present moment. Can you help our listeners understand what you mean by that?
Yeah, we sort of stumbled on that idea in our last show when we're sort of thinking about why is it we're not in the present moment. And if I think about, like the societal development of a human being is that it sort of starts off going into the school system, where going to the school system at kindergarten or grade 1, and the whole objective, well, it's to get to the next grade, and then the next grade after that, and next grade after that. And even within the construct of each individual grade, there's this pressure to achieve something, get the best marks, be the best at sports, be something. It's always this constant move that we need to be working at something to get to the next level. And that just continues on and on and on in our development. What we have, this idea that whatever's going on right now isn't good enough, but if you work really harder, that what's about to come is going to be what you need to get to. And then you get there and there's yet another level. And so we go through the school system and then we get into life. And by that point in time, I think it's safe to say we're pretty conditioned, we're pretty programmed that that's what life's all about. Life's about getting to the next level, like a video game or something like that. What we have in the present moment is not important. It's a stepping stone to get to that next moment in the future, whatever that entails. And as I sit and think about that, effectively, it's going to create a society full of people that are simply not present because they're all looking for the next moment in life.
That's interesting. I mean, when you speak to that, what I also hear is that, so we're driven to achieve.
Yes.
From the minute we enter the school system.
Yeah.
That 100%. And then that continues throughout our life, from school to university, from university to the workforce, etc., if that's a path that we take. But achievement is actually what's driving us. Yes?
Yeah.
And in essence, what that means is that being content in the moment, being at peace in the moment, being satisfied, satiated in the moment, actually means being lazy, according to our society.
I think that's the perspective it takes. And where I see that play is that I coach a lot of kids sports. And listen, I got caught up in all this too. I'm like coming to this realization now. But there's all like parents bringing their kids to play soccer or baseball or whatever it is. That's supposed to be fun. And man, the pressure on those kids from the parents, the coach, and everyone else to practice hard, to get better, to win, to continually perform, and then they're competing for selects or competing for all stars. It's even in a thing that's supposed to be leisure time and fun. It's not okay to just be in the present moment. Make fun of those kids fooling around in left field, picking flowers and enjoying themselves. Where they're looked down upon, they're put pressure on, and then eventually they quit sports because it's not fun. So it's everywhere.
And just to be clear, I also got caught up in it. And you know what? I think in many ways, it's a check and balance of continuously getting caught up in it because it is so much of what drives our world at this stage. And when I say our world, I mean our North American, Western, actually probably the Western world in a large way. It doesn't actually drive the entire world. And we saw that and have probably seen it many times, but we definitely saw it most recently in our trip to Africa. But when I say I get caught up in it, and I say that I get caught up in it consistently, is that, I mean, just to give you an example, we have kids who are going to university or who are getting ready to graduate high school and go to university. And even just the idea that that is the path you take. And that in order to be a successful teenager, you move from high school into university because that's what everybody does, because that's what means you've achieved, you've made it. And we're sitting here in a place now, or at least I am, and we are in terms of conversations around, well, is that actually so? What does success mean to each and every individual? And how do we peel back some of the layers and expectations that society puts on us to be able to actually start tapping into what our kids actually want and what feels right to them versus all of this conditioning and have tos of what they're supposed to accomplish?
Yeah, like even that word success, and I'll challenge you, the listener, if you've ever thought and defined what you mean by success. And you may not even ask the question, what is it that I specifically mean by success? And then take a look at how much that may be conditioned into you, what that very well involves something financial, owning something, a certain way life's supposed to turn out, all these various things, which are effectively what I'm suggesting is like it's the programming we've been given our entire life to aiming to achieve these things. And whenever we get these things, there's another level in the game to be played.
So why do you think it matters? Why do you think it matters that society is, well, I'm going to say that differently. What damage do you think is actually being created by this perception of achievement to us as individuals?
Well, I want to start with what it actually means on a factual type basis. It means that we have a society that is discontent with the present moment. That whatever the current moment is, collectively, it's not good enough.
How do you know that?
What's that?
How do you know that?
Because that would be what escaping the present moment is.
How do you know that we have a society that's discontent with the present moment? How do you see that?
Where I see that based on this idea that it's a society that's constantly in an achievement mode, constantly trying to get the next thing. It's by definition, whatever's happening in the present moment isn't enough. If that's what's happening within society.
Well, we're positing that it is what's happening in society. And so I guess I'll ask the question a little differently. How do you see that in your own life and in your work life? How is that showing up? That discontent is actually very present.
Right. So talking about myself or society now, what's your question?
I'm asking you, how is that? We're making the assumption that society is discontent, or we're speaking to an observation.
Or discontent with the present moment
Right,
because they want to change it.
right.
Okay.
But I'm asking you, in order to be able to give our listeners a little bit more of a sense of what that means, how do you know that? What do you see that's suggesting that
Oh, I
level
see
of
what you're saying. Okay.
discontent?
Um, I suppose what I see at a societal basis, this is my view, is that there's tremendous amount of polarity, division, anxiety, mass psychosis in the sense, constant competing with one another. There's very little unity, very little oneness, and very little peace in our society. To me, that's symptomatic of a society that is not content with what's happening in the present moment. And an observation I'll have is I look at in the realm of politics. Very rarely do I see a politician come up on the stage and say, "Hey, it's perfect right now. Let's all be grateful for this present moment. Look at the abundance we have." It's never about that. It's all about all the mistakes that those people have made and how we blame them and how we have to change things to get better and all those things we have to do next.
So, what I'm hearing is not just a discontent with the present moment, but also a projecting of that discontent outward on the world around them.
Yeah. And by no means am I suggesting this is conscious. That's why I'm saying it's conditioned. This is the programming we have. We're programmed to not take stock of the moment we have right now and constantly strive for the next, whether it be more money, a better job, more possessions, a different vacation, all these things we talked about in the first episode. We're constantly striving to get to that place that's not now, it's in the future. And it often comes at the expense of being able to just be at peace and enjoy and be grateful for the moment around us.
So, you often use the word programming. It's our program. It's our program. And I wonder if you can help our listeners understand what that program actually means, because you've used the word, well, you've implied unconscious. Um, but I think that programming is something that we often use for computers. It's not necessarily something that we use for people. So help our listeners understand what that actually means.
That's a great question. And I like that computer analogy too. It's like when we're born a complete blank slate, full of wonder, full of connection to everything around us. And from that place, we have to survive to adulthood. We have to survive our family. We have to survive our culture. We have to survive our neighborhood, any circumstances going on in our life, anything going on with our parents. All these various factors comes into play that we need to develop a persona, an ego structure, or a conditioning in order to get from A to B. And we come out the other side of that thinking that this ego structure, this program is what we are, and we identify with it, we attach with it. And that's the program, or some people call it the ego. And it is a survival mechanism that allows us to survive our childhood, but it's actually not who we are. And why it's important to understand this is I'm going to go back to your computer analogy. It's, in a sense, we think we're the program, but not the computer. So if my conditioning, whatever is, in using a computer example, is I've been conditioned to think I'm a Word document. I think I'm a word processing program, and that's all I know. And so I go out in the world thinking I'm a word processing document. Or I think I'm a spreadsheet. That's my program. I'm going to go out in the world and identify with being a spreadsheet. But the reality is I am so much more than all of those things. I have an unlimited ability to do anything because I am the actual computer underlying it.
Okay, so you took that computer analogy and went with it. Yeah. Now let's bring it down into the realm of the personal.
Right.
So give me an example of a program that somebody carries that limits them.
Yeah, I'll use myself.
Great.
And so I grew up in an alcoholic household. My parents were teenagers when I was born, and my mom was an alcoholic. And we talked about this in the show before. And I developed a survival program where, in a sense, if I was going to get the love and attention I needed, I was in competition with the disorder my mother had, which is alcoholism. So I learned very early in life that if I was going to get any attention at all, I best be good at things. I best be special. And so I learned adaptive behavior very quickly that I needed to achieve, to be recognized, and achieve to feel something, and achieve to be validated. So that turned into, best marks at high school, best marks at university, overworking and being very, very successful throughout my life. But I was running in a program that if I didn't do these things, I wouldn't be loved, I wouldn't be included, and I would be rejected. And so my whole life was driven by this program that was constantly, in the context of this conversation, taking me out of the present moment, because I was so busy focused on what I had to accomplish next. Because if I stopped and I wasn't achieving things, nobody would love me.
So when I listen to you describe that, something gets really loud. And that's that these unconscious programs that you're speaking to and that we speak to become so much a part of who we are, so much a part of who you are, that you don't even know that they're there until often something happens that prevents you from being able to actually engage in that program. So I'm not going to use you as an example, but I'm going to speak to your example and say, so what happens when you get sick and you can't be in the mode of achievement? What happens when there's an accident and you can't be in the mode of achievement? What happens when a company shuts down and you can't be doing that? All of a sudden, you're left with the feeling that's actually been driving that your whole life unconsciously, which oftentimes will take you into panic because it's whatever those feelings are that sit under that program are what you've been trying to protect your whole life. And all of a sudden, you come face to face with what feels like a tsunami of emotion and sensation that you very quickly are going to try and scramble to find some way around because you've never learned how to be with them in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's where we're taking this conversation, because it's those very feelings on a societal level that we've never learned how to be with, because we're constantly rushing toward what it is we think we're meant to be getting to, not recognizing that in avoiding that very piece, we're actually constricting the program that we run into something so much less than what we are. And as a result, we then end up getting angry at the world around us because we're not satisfied. But we don't recognize that what we're not satisfied with is the wholeness of our own expression.
Yeah. And in the context of what you just talked about, can you talk about your own programming, your own conditioning?
I don't think yet, because I
Right.
don't actually think, I don't, my own programming, not because I'm not willing, because I will be transparent with all of you about anything, actually. I can tell you where my programming gets me stuck through examples, because for me, unlike your experience, my experience seems to be quite gradual in its sort of unveiling, and layers come off over time. I can speak to what's happened recently in terms of layers that have come off, if that's what you're asking. Is that?
No, I think more just broadly speaking, as if you look back at your childhood growing up and became aware that, hey, this is this is the things that are driving me right now, potentially driving you out of the present moment.
Okay, I can
And
do
maybe
that.
getting
Yeah,
into when did you have present moment awareness, right? This is where we're sort of transitioning into this.
sure. So my programming, if I was to really break it down, looks like I grew up in a family where there was a lot of health issues. My mom was sick from very early on. I have a really wonderful father who also has a really, who had um, a real inability to be with emotion. He just couldn't handle it. And so I learned how to, the way that I internalized that to stay safe in my own family was um, to be strong, to be capable, to be able to manage whatever came my way, no matter what. I learned how to please people so that I got the love that I needed. I learned how not to displease by keeping emotions as best I could. And I wasn't very good at it all the time to myself. And I learned how to be for other people rather than to be for me. And it took me many, many years to see it. And I would say that at close to 50 years old, um, layers of that, every time I think I've sort of hit the place where I'm done with it, I'm snapped back into this awareness that no matter how much work I, excuse me, no matter how much work I do, there are always deeper layers of growing and learning in this because the program runs so deep that I might be conscious of the way that it shows up in some aspects of my life. But then when I see reactivity in myself in other areas of my life, I begin to recognize that that programming is still at play in ways that I don't quite understand. And then I'm brought into places where, thanks to the cultivation of present moment awareness and working with it, I can see it differently and I can begin to work with it.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And it's this idea, and what you've touched on in there is that when we're in, our conditioning and we're in this reactive state, we're not in the present moment because we're at the mercy of whatever is happening. We're quite become very mechanical in how we're acting. We're just not present for what's going on. And it's not just Jacqueline and I. We brought up our examples because all of you have the conditioning. Everyone in society, that's the point. Everyone in society has been conditioned by the same society conditioning to greater or lesser extents in your own household, but society as a whole is pushing us forward in a certain way. And it's at the detriment of the present moment, I think is what we're saying.
Yeah, and I want to be really conscious about the way that we're speaking because we live in a society that is where victim mentality has become very, very loud. And so I say that because I don't want you to hear that we're blaming society for this, but rather we're recognizing that this is a collective issue. And each one of us, the only way that that can change is if each one of us begins to take personal responsibility for how it's showing up in ourselves.
Yeah, that was well put. And I'd even go further and just say that, society is set up this way for, it appears to be for a reason. I mean, it does lead to achievement. It does lead to us moving forward, productivity and technology and all these other things. It's effective at those things. It just may come at the cost of mental health. It may come at the cost of collective mental health, which I think is what we're observing is showing up in society.
I would take that even further and say it may not cause. It does have a profound impact on our mental health. It has a profound impact on our sense of self-worth. It has a profound impact on the way that we actually see ourselves. And it has a profound impact on our relationships and our capacity to actually live in a body that feels content and happy. It's pretty damaging, actually. And it's really interesting, it's really interesting to sort of, as you and I have been spending the last couple of weeks having these conversations with each other, it's pretty profound to actually get to this place where once you see this, you can't really unsee it. And it's less about seeing it. I mean, we see it out there, but it actually becomes really loud when you start to see how many of the decisions you make in here are driven by those unconscious patterns. And it's really important for us to be able to get to a place where we can shift them, or our society and we individually and as families, we're going to get sicker and sicker. Yeah. Because I think we're actually being called on to something different.
And I have this theory. I don't even mention to you before when I I go down lots of different avenues to entertain my intellectual curiosity. But when I think about things like advanced civilizations that may or may not have existed on Earth or on other planets, I highly suspect that they had mastered present moment consciousness, and they would look at what we're doing as not necessarily advanced at all, just crafting, constantly seeking for the future, constantly trying to build stuff with their hand. I suspect that these societies had mastered the ability to use consciousness in the present moment and be very, very aware. And it's just something we've taken a different direction as a society.
Well, and you and I have had this conversation before about not just ancient civilizations, but we were talking a little bit about our experience in Africa and recognizing that, you're born in North America or the Western world, and you think that you're so lucky on some levels, and then you actually look at you think you're so lucky because you have all of these things, and you have, and in some ways we have security and safety and all of that. But we also are born into hell in other ways, because with all of this stuff and all of this achievement, what we're actually being guided to do is ignore on some level the very basic things that are most important for us as human beings, which is connection, time, space, the capacity to actually feel who we are and what matters to us. Instead, we're so busy doing and being that we have to work really hard to negate the world outside to be able to start to tap into what's real for us in the moment.
Yeah, that was a great example. I remember a conversation we had a couple of days ago where we were talking about this subject, and I made this comment that I had a profound experience in that trip when we were working at a Muri, which was a conservatory, and we were doing volunteer work there. We had this fellow who was working with us the entire time named Bright. He was sort of the facilitator. He drove the Jeep. He lived there with his family. And I said to Jacqueline, honestly, if you ask me right now, if I would trade places with anyone I've ever met in my life in the world right now, and I don't want to trade places, I'm halfway through my life, it would be Bright. It would be this guy living in Africa, because there's something about the way he was relating to the world that was just captivating for me. Like he had it figured out.
He had a sparkle in his eye.
Yeah.
He was present in every movement.
That's right.
And that's not to say that his life is perfect. We're not making that assumption, but there was something about the way that he was embodied, that was very telling about his capacity to be present and in the moment. And with that, why don't we take a break, and then we'll come right back.
See you soon.
Welcome back. So, I'm sitting here over our break thinking about the idea that you're kind of a bit of a poster child for present moment awareness. And I say that because you have really gone from living a life very unconsciously to living a life very, very consciously. And as Jude, our son, spoke not very long ago, he said to me, Chris is one of the calmest people I've ever met in my life. And he said it, and it really touched me profoundly that he could pick up energetically what you're putting out. And even in the 4 years that we've been together, there has been a tremendous shift in you into living and breathing in this moment here now. Um, and letting go of fear of letting go of fear in its entirety, actually, and letting go of a need to control outcomes and what happens next. And it shows up in the way you flow in your life. It shows up actually in every arena in your life. And I'd love for you to help our audience understand why you've done the work that you've done. Why is it so important to be in the now?
Thank you for that. That was nice to hear. It was a nice reflection. Um,
It's true.
yeah. Well, if I think about like, I'm going to think about it this way, like, because I was absolutely someone who lived the first 49, 50 years, like completely away from the present moment. I was always searching for this next thing in almost a frantic way. I was sort of this mix of nervous energy and excitement, like all the time, always trying to move forward to the next thing. Like the typical guy that maybe you're like this too, that I couldn't go to a beach and just sit there. And I would wear that like a badge of honor. Like I thought that was a good thing at the time. And I don't believe that anymore. I can sit at a beach now. I can sit anywhere now and just enjoy myself. But what I think has changed is I am no longer most of the time I'm less likely to be head centered and more likely to be heart centered now. And for the majority of my life, I was head centered, where that program, where that conditioning exists. It's the mental thinking of what's going to happen next, wanting to control things and the fear. And I think for me, present moments awareness is being able to drop into my heart. And when I drop into my heart, what I have found that the emotions that come from that place is a tremendous amount of peace and joy and unconditional love in almost just like this steady state. It's not frantic energy at all. It's very high vibrational, but steady. And I specifically relate to it when I'm in that place. What I connect to in my language, it's like I feel I'm connecting to the unified field of consciousness, the quantum field, God, whatever term you like to use. That's what I'm feeling I'm connecting to in the present moment. And for me, that only exists in the present moment. When I'm in my head, I don't connect to it. When I'm not still, I don't connect to it. But when I'm present, I'm calm, I'm aware, and I'm grateful for what I have. Suddenly, I'm now connected to this thing, which I can't actually truly explain, except to know that it's everywhere and everything. And now I'm into it. And and what's the benefit of that for me is all of a sudden my intuition is now activated, my discernment's now activated, my knowing is activated. I feel like I've tapped into this place of all knowledge of things past and forward and now, that I don't need to go out with my mind and seek knowledge, because now I'm engrossed in it. And it sounds like I'm off, like I'm suggesting there's so much to in the present moment, but for me, really there is. It's been the greatest change in my life to be able to access the peace and tranquility and equanimity that comes in the present moment. And I think one of the things that I've sat with to understand why that is if I bring my brain into it a little bit, it's because I understand now that the present moment is really the only thing there is. It's the only time that's real. And when I'm not in the present moment, I'm often psychological time, or which is basically I'm thinking about the past, which for me, it's just electrical signals in my brain that's pulling up some distorted version of what's happened in the past, or I'm trying to plan what's going to happen in the future. And all of that's happening in the present moment, but I'm just devoid of experiencing what's actually happening here. So that's how I would describe the benefit of it.
So I'm going to ask you to do that a little differently
Yeah.
because I heard that, and I think that we can all hear that.
Mhm.
But if you're anything like me, to actually compute what that means to you might be a little bit challenging. So can you actually give us a physical example of how you handle life differently by being in the present moment?
that's actually a great question. Um, it's in particular with my interactions with others.
I want to actually like a
Yeah,
deep specific example.
yeah. So before, if I'm when I was head centered and I'm talking to people, I'm listening to their words. I'm trying to make sense of what they're saying. I'm getting triggered all over the place because because of my own stuff. I'm probably trying to control them. I'm trying to. It's always trying to figure what's in it for me. That's what's happening when I'm interacting with other people. Now, when I'm interacting with other people, I'm interacting from a place of consciousness. In that, as I'm sitting with someone and they're talking, I'm not paying that much attention to the words. So I'm listening, but that's not what I'm tapping into. I'm tapping into this person coming from a place of fear. Are they coming from a place of shame? Because if they are, maybe I can relieve the burden. If they're coming from a place of fear, maybe I can help them feel safe. Or are they coming from a place of joy, and can I join them in it? But it's this felt experience of all my interactions now, because I'm coming from this place from the heart, not from the head, and I'm feeling everyone and everything around me as an energetic field. It's transcended the words that are being used or what's being said. So that for me is the biggest shift in my life, is how I interact with everyone around me by through present moment awareness.
So what it sounds like, and I mean, I experience you every day. So um, I know what it feels like to be with you in those moments. And I also know what it's like to be with you when you lose that
Yeah.
moment. And it's very jarring because the difference is really profound. But what I'm really hearing you say is that your ability to be in the moment expands your capacity to be able to experience what's happening right here, right now. And in doing so, allows you to be able to see the unseen and hear the unheard and serve as an invitation for the people that are with you to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said. And I'd say it also in different language for some of our viewers. If the present moment's the only moment that exists, and it's the moment of creation, and if I'm fully present in the moment of creation, I can co-create the moment with the universe and with you, or with anyone, or with anyone sitting with me. I'm now in a co-creation mode, because the only creation that's happening is right now in this particular moment. And so now part of the creative process, my creativity starts to flow.
Rather than being in a place where you're reliving, repeating old patterns in history.
Yeah. Trying to force an outcome based on a program that I'm running that says it's supposed to be this way, even though that's not the way it is. And if I'm not doing that, all of a sudden I'm not fighting anyone or anything. I'm not in conflict with anything. I'm just simply in a creative process with the universe
So I'll take that.
when I can hold it.
Yeah, well, for sure.
Yeah.
And don't be under any illusions that he holds it 24/7 because he
100%
doesn't.
no. Very flawed
And
human being.
none of us do. And none of us, I mean, that's not the intent. The intent is to recognize when we've gotten off course and to be able to come back into alignment as quickly as we can. It's not to never go off course, because as human beings, innately, we're going to go off course. But how quickly can we bring ourselves back to center is what's essential. So I'm sort of listening to you, and I want to just bring back this example because it's, I don't know, it's quite poignant for me in this moment for sure, and I think it's quite poignant for parents in general, which is when we can hold the kind of perspective that Chris is speaking to, we have the capacity to actually hear what our kids are feeling, are needing, are wanting, are yearning for, and help open doors with and for them. Well, not for them, help open, well, sometimes for them, but help them, help guide them to open doors that they're actually moving towards rather than imposing our ideas of what we think they're supposed to be doing, which actually is quite constricting and damaging.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So that was me. And because I know this journey is so individual with everybody, I'm really curious to hear, and the listeners are too, of what is your experience
How
with
do
present
you know
moment
what the
awareness?
listeners are waiting
Oh,
for?
I know. Present moment awareness.
Over radio waves.
Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry, I interrupted.
How do you experience present moment awareness?
Hmm. You know what? We will often laugh because Chris can speak in a way that is quantum in his speaking. And my speaking always tends to be really embodied because I am a very raw, embodied, messy, earthy human. So I'll speak from that place because that's
Please.
where this is going to come from. Um, you know, this whole idea of getting into the moment and living in the moment and all of these words, but be here now and all of those, all of, well, the guidance from so many spiritual teachers that are around and many traditions that have held that as most significant. I think our world has made them kind of airy fairy and this assumption that we live in a world where, land in the present moment, landing in present moment awareness is like unicorns and I don't know, it's all love and love, 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 and it's pure joy and wonderful. It's a crock of shit, to be honest with you. I experience present moment awareness really differently. And I'm not saying those moments don't happen. Chris just showed you that they do. And they happen for me too. But actually, present moment awareness can be really painful because practicing being in the moment means practicing experiencing what your body is feeling in the moment. It brings us out of the head, as you said beautifully, and into the body. The head can make up all kinds of stories. The body doesn't lie. The body isn't conniving. And I say that because when the body feels, it feels. And sometimes it feels constricted and tight. Sometimes it makes you feel like you're going to throw up. Sometimes fear takes over, and what you feel in your body is panic and frozen. But present moment awareness is designed to bring you into feeling. And the reason is that whatever the stories are that we created to protect ourselves from feeling are the very stories that need to fall away in order for us to return to whatever that feeling was so that we can give it the attention that it needs and allow it to dissolve so that it no longer has a hold on us. And to do that, it takes a tremendous amount of courage. It takes a tremendous amount of willingness to unwind old patterns of being. And sometimes it takes somebody to do it with us because it feels too scary. And that's not to say it's work you can't do on your own, because I have and I do. And I lean in to people when I know that I need to, um, including you.
Mhm.
Um, but the gift of present moment awareness is profound. And I think maybe sharing a little bit of what I've just recently experienced might be helpful. What do you think?
Yeah, please.
Does that okay?
Yeah. And just before
Um,
you start, I jumped over the path to the sort of the good parts of present moment awareness. It's like, I I label my path from being completely head centered to heart centered as a dark night of the soul. There's nothing enjoyable about that process.
yeah,
So yeah.
that's thanks for saying that
Yeah.
because I think that makes it far more real for people when
Yeah.
they listen to it. Um, I recently had a really interesting experience, and I'm not going to get into the story around it because it's not important, but I'm happy to have a conversation with any of you if you want to have a conversation with me about it, and I can share more then. But what I got to experience, I thought I had done all of this work, and I have done a ton of work. But then there's this place that I didn't know was still actually running an unconscious program. And that was in my family dynamic. And I'm not speaking to our family, I'm speaking to my family of origin. And what happened for me through that process was some things happened that really tripped me up and activated me in a way that really surprised me. And I felt more deeply than I have ever felt, I think, in my entire life. And what I mean by that is through all of the work that I had done, I had grown the muscle of being able to be with what I was feeling. And I went deep and I felt every ounce of what was showing up for me in a way that I had never felt before, in ways that I would have judged myself for feeling before, in ways that I would have hidden from anybody. But most importantly, I would have hidden from myself. And for whatever reason, I chose to not hide. And through that process, something really beautiful happened, which was I was able to see that in surrendering to the sensation and the feelings that I was having, I was actually also able to surrender and to see the gift in why they were happening. And so I'll give you an example of that so I make sense. Um, I was really experiencing the feeling of being shamed as a piece of what was going on and being talked about. And what happened for me through this process was I felt that deeply, like a kid would feel it deeply. And then one night I was lying in my bed and I was really sad and really hurting. And I said, what is it that I'm not seeing? I asked, what is it that I'm not seeing? Why is this upsetting me so much? And what I got was, I'll say I heard, but I didn't hear. I felt somewhere in my body. This experience is a mirror for you, and it's mirroring to you where you are shaming your own child. And in that moment, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel shame. I didn't even feel sad. I felt like a door had opened. And in that opening, the possibility of not living that pattern had just been created. And it was like a huge weight was lifted off of me. And the funny thing is that a huge weight was energetically lifted off of me. And at the same time, within 2 days, 5 pounds was lifted off of me. And something shifted in me in that moment that allowed me to begin to see the world, every interaction differently. And I share that with you because there's something in this, that this work of becoming present, it's painful work, it's difficult work, but it's the only way that we become personally responsible for how we show up in the world. And it's the only way that we can begin to open doors. First for ourselves. And then in opening the door for ourselves to feel what we never gave ourselves permission to feel, to actually open the door to each other and to open the door to each other with compassion and without judgment.
Would you say that within, part of what I heard you say, and maybe I'm projecting my own stuff onto this, is this idea that in the more you get into present moment awareness, the more you begin to realize that everything actually is perfect. It's the way it's supposed to be. And the problem is you're getting in your way of seeing how that's true because you want it to be something different. And the more you sit in that place and take the and feel that pain that you're feeling and just allow it to flow through you, you then are allowed to see where you've gotten in your own way.
So I want to say yes to
Yeah.
all of that. And I think that even last week, I might have said yes to all of that.
Mm,
But I think I might frame that even a little differently.
please.
And it'll be the first time I say it. So I might stumble here. Um, I think everything that's showing up in the moment is a function of how we see the world and is a function of all of the ways in which it's a function of our programming.
Yes.
And so I'm not going to tell you that I think that everything in the world as it shows up is perfect, because perfection, first of all, it doesn't exist. But I actually don't think it's perfect. I think everything that's showing up in the world is showing up as a function of our programming. And that when we shift our programming and we come home to the truth that exists inside of ourselves, then life shows up really differently. That said, everything that's showing up in our life is perfect from the standpoint that everything that's here right now is here right now as an opportunity for me to unwind my programming. And if I can recognize that everything that's showing up for me is not in spite of me, but actually, in my belief, the a function of our soul needing to see itself as it is, rather than through all of the stories that we've told ourselves that have belittled who we are, that it won't stop knocking at our door through our experiences to invite us into seeing that. So, yes and no.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe perfect's the wrong word, although maybe it's a word I'd use for, my own spiritual beliefs. But certainly I know, because I've experienced that there's a tremendous amount of what I'll call joy and bliss and unconditional love that resides in that present moment. And I have found when I'm not experiencing those things now, it's because my conditioning has gotten in the way, because I have an idea that it's supposed to be different than it is. And that's coming from my conditioning. So when that shows up now, I have this wonderful opportunity to go and look at what's happening. Chris, where do you want things to be different than they are? Because number one, that's insane. They are how they are. Why are you in conflict with this thing? And can you trace it to what you know about your own conditioning? And it's just an ongoing process that I do eagerly now, because I know every time I go through it, just like you described, you went through it, all of a sudden you open up another level, or a broader bandwidth of consciousness, and allow a little bit more peace into your life.
So, I would say to you, just to respond to that again, from the way that you're holding life as perfect, yes, I agree. But that takes an attitude of recognizing or of believing that the universe wants to partner you
Mm-hmm.
in your growth and will give you every opportunity to unwind anything that limits you. And so all of these incredible opportunities will arise, and they won't feel incredible, not all the time. We will get what we need in order to break free of these patterns. It won't look like what we want. And if we fight what is, because it's not the way we think things should be, then we've lost the point. But if he can find a way to embrace what is and work through the pain that shows up around it, then we can deliver ourselves from a lot of the pain that we experience on a daily basis.
Yeah, I only have about 30 seconds left, and I'm just going to wrap up and say, if this resonates with you, the question, what can we do if this is this big collective problem? It's one, recognize you're conditioned. That's the first step, the biggest step. Become aware that yes, I'm conditioned. I'm going to accept this as truth. And then you start exploring what that conditioning is and where it's leading in your decision making and taking you away from having the life that is available for you right now in this present moment. And there's lots of people out there to help you with that, including us. So with that, I think we'll wrap it up, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.